We'll call the meeting to order and we'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll start off with our roll call. Janelle? Here. Caroline? Here. Mark?
Present.
Carla's here. Danny?
Here.
And David?
Present.
Thank you. Any additions or amendments to today's agenda before we entertain a motion to approve it? All right.
Make a motion to approve.
Support. Motion by Mark, supported by Caroline, that we approve the May 11th, 2022 agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? All right, motion carried. Looking for an approval for the minutes of our regular meeting on April 13th.
Move approval of the April 13th, 2022 minutes. Support.
Motion by David, supported by Danny, that we approve the minutes from the April 13th, 2022 meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? All right, motion carried. At this time, we'll open it up for any public comment. Anybody who would like to address the Planning Commission can do so. If you could, before you address us, just state your name and address and what township that you live in. All right.
Chair, I'll just see if anybody on Zoom would like to make a public comment, please feel free to unmute yourself or otherwise raise your hand and we can call on you. Just a second here. I'm not seeing anybody on Zoom that wants to make a public comment.
All right. Thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
First thing on our agenda today is Clinton County is in the process of renewing their master plan, or what they call their comprehensive plan. This is a 5-year renewal. The last time they did it was 2016. It's all updated and presented. We do have a draft copy here that they've asked us for our consideration on. So we've all had time to review that. Just a little background, the process started at the beginning of 2021. They went through and kind of reviewed this. COVID held them up a little bit, but they were able to complete and get this draft to us. And I believe that they're going to vote on that at their regular commissioners meeting in June. This was completed in-house by county staff, and they did recruit 2 MSU interns to update that. So any questions, or you guys want to have a discussion before we give them our stamp of approval? All right.
I'd make a motion that we make it move it to the next meeting.
We can't, Mark, because they are actually going to adopt this at their first commissioners meeting in June.
Can't vote on something I haven't read.
We were all sent copies of it. It's also on the website, on their website, the draft is posted. All right, so you're motioning to table it to the next meeting? Do I have a support for that then? Okay. All right, does anybody want a motion to approve it and send it on our way?
I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Thanks. All right, thank you, Janelle. Do we have a support for that?
I'll support.
Thank you, Caroline. Motion by Janelle, supported by Caroline, that we approve Clinton County's comprehensive plan for the year 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
No.
Motion carried. All right, our next item, we have 3 PA 116s that we need to take a look at. Our first one is in section 14 of New Haven Township. This is a 77-acre parcel that is all tillable. As I reviewed the application, everything looks good to go. To me, everything's completed. We have everything that we need. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that one? This is for Decibel Investments. There's a GIS printout. That should be your last page. Okay. Okay, for support. Is that you, Dave?
Yeah.
All right, motion by Mark, supported by Dave, that we approve the PA 116 application for the 77-acre parcel of land in section 14 of New Haven Township. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? All right, motion carried. All right, next one up, it's another Decibel parcel. This one's also in New Haven, section 11. This is a 70-acre parcel. And as I reviewed this, on page 2, section 16, it is incomplete. We don't have the 40 acres or more box checked. Number 16, let's see here, B and D are both empty. Other than that, we do have all of the pertinent information required. It's just the application is not completed. Yeah, and I'll also note too, these aren't, New Haven obviously isn't a township that we zone. They are independent. So they these first 3 that I'm going to be discussing are just for our consideration. They will be approved at their own board level. So.
What was the date or sheet here? The date or sheet.
It looks like it was resent in February of 2020.
No, so that first date, so sorry, to explain these applications, we've reviewed them, and then at the township level, someone misplaced them, and they never got sent to the state, only part of their PA 116 did. So we have to re-review them again due to the date level. So that timestamp at the top is from the original application.
That's the original, yeah, February, so it's expired, so you got another date then you want to put in there?
Yes, the date was on Monday, 2 weeks ago. Sorry.
So the 23rd, oh wait. 24th. All right, any questions or comments on this section?
Where's the acreage? Is there any acreage?
Section, the page 2 is not complete, like I had stated. So, yeah.
You can make a motion to make that like, fill that application. I'll make a motion that we approve this, so then I'm just spelling out section 16, water B.
All right, thank you, Janelle. Do I have a second on that one? 4. All right. Motion by Janelle, supported by Danny, that we approve the PA 116 application for section 11 of New Haven Township with a completion on the application of number 16 B and D. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carried. Next one we have, this is a Fulton Township parcel. It's like section 9 of Fulton Township. This is an all tillable 76.5 acre parcel. I'd like to move into PA 116. This is also one of the townships that we do not zone. This is just for our recommendation.
Move approval of parcel 05, 009, 004.
All right, thank you, Dave. We have a second for our Fulton Township section. Motion by Dave, supported by Mark, that we approve the PA 116 application for Fulton Township section 9, 76 acre parcel number 05009004000. All in favor? Opposed, the same? All right, motion carried. All right, our last PA 116 is in North Star Township. This is section 25. It's a 40 acre parcel. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the application or any of the supporting documents? Okay. Motion by Janelle, supported by Caroline, that we approve the PA 116 application for the 40 acre parcel located in section 25 of North Star Township. Parcel number 11025000820. All in favor?
I'm sorry.
No problem. All in favor? All right, all in favor of the motion that's still on the table? Opposed, the same? All right, motion carried. All right, that wraps up our regular business for this month's meeting, and we will move on to our special use application and our site plan reviews. And I believe that Cindy from Spicer is going to take it from here, and she's going to go over the staff report that was sent to all of you. This is going to outline each turbine location. We're going to talk about laydown yards, substations. So if we could have, if any of you are landowners and we get to your specific parcel, if you could just raise your hand if you have questions. Cindy can address those questions for you. And we do have Invenergy here with their experts too, in case there are any other questions. So we'll give you the floor, Cindy.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just as a clarification, I just wanted to clarify that the applicant is Invenergy and Spicer Group represents the county, and we are doing the review through your ordinance and looking at the application so that it is in compliance with your ordinance as presented. I just wanted to make that just clarification, just of the two.
Yes,
Sure.
And all of you were provided in your packet our bylaws and how we govern and make decisions on that. So we can review that after Cindy goes through the staff report and after we hear from the applicant. So
Great.
perfect.
Thank you. So you guys have this dissertation that we gave you that was quite large. And so if I will, I'll go through it. We'll have the report up there and we'll go through it, but I'm just gonna go through just some general in the beginning of it. And then we're gonna hit each of the sections with each of the turbines and talk a little bit more specifically about it, if that's good with you guys. I just really, if I could just review kind of where we've been and where we're at right now and kind of what our next steps forward are with you. So just as a reminder, right now we're looking at the Newark Township and North Star Township, and the project proposes 29 turbines with access roads and underground collection lines. And what we did back in March, there's a two-step process to our special use. And in March, the board had a public hearing on the special land use. And at that meeting, the Planning Commission completed the first step by conditionally approving the special land use permit. The site plan review is what we're doing today. It's our second step of the process. And it's today at 5 p.m. What I wanted to do is just to reiterate that the turbines, we are looking at chapters 14.4 of the Gratiot County zoning ordinance requirements, and our report is reviewing the ordinance to those plans, or reviewing those plans to the ordinance. And just a couple things just for the consideration. Prior to construction, just some things I would like to have the commission kind of consider. Prior to construction, the applicant is going to need to submit certified foundation plans for a professional engineer. Prior to construction, they're going to need to have a decommissioning agreement that is agreeable to the county for decommissioning and the project components. The applicant is also going to need to be able to comply prior to construction with state, local, federal laws and regulations to provide for all copies of all permits. We'll need copies of all permits. The applicant will need to provide the minimum lighting standard required by the Federal Aviation Administration. The applicant will also need to provide the Planning Commission their ADLS, which is their Aircraft Detection Lighting System application, and be able to provide the county updated monthly updates to where that is, the status is with the aircraft detection lighting system. The project, all the components of the project will be applicable to local, state, national, and international electrical codes. The applicant will also need to provide the Planning Commission the determination of no hazard from the FAA, from the Federal Aviation, for each turbine in compliance with the local airport zoning and Michigan Tall Structures Act. The applicant will need to provide a copy of the approved transportation plan in accordance with Gratiot County Road Commission, and then also a copy of the road use agreement and then financial application with the Gratiot County Road Commission. The applicant will need to enter into an agreement which was required of obligation of all the project impacts and infrastructures with the Drain Commission, and that they will be restored and how they will be restored. The applicant will be required to submit a complaint resolution process. We try to hit as much as we can as we do the report, and as we do our final resolution. But the complaint resolution is a process that after everything is installed, that is the opportunity that the applicant will provide a phone number and the process and the time frame, that if anybody has any issues that they can contact, they have a process to go through that they can contact and get their issue resolved. And then that gets reported back to the county as well. The applicant shall provide an escrow deposit for continuing the county enforcement of zoning ordinance and zoning approval requirements in the amount and financial instruments acceptable to the county, which will be replenished. If it's depleted, it must be funded throughout the life of the project. The applicant needs to provide detailed shadow flicker plans describing how actual shadow flicker will meet the section 14.4E of the ordinance, and document how the shadow flicker will be met, and include how the shadow flicker is going to be met, if it needs to be curtailed, the process of curtailment, how that is going to happen, and and to guarantee that the shadow flicker will not be more than 30 hours per year on an occupied building. During construction, that was all prior to, so that's prior to your zoning permit. That'd be all before permit, before they even start construction. You need to have all that in hand before they could even start. During construction, as a condition of the approval, if there's a change that's less than 100 feet, so if they're going to move it less than 100 feet, the applicant will only need to consult with the zoning administrator or planning consultant on the request of the changes to ensure that it's continually in compliance with the zoning ordinance. The applicant is not required, if it's moved underneath 100 foot, to go back through the whole planning commission if it's a minor siting change. Alterations to the access roads, underground electrical collection systems, these are all on participating parcels, will be allowed with the landowner's permission and to
Feedback.
with the landowner's permission, and if any of that has to happen, we just have to make sure that all of the permits, if there's any additional permits, those will all need to be adhered to, whether it be Eagle permits, federal permits, state permits, those all have to be adhered to if any of those things were going to get moved. Post-construction, the applicant must provide post-construction certification that complies with all the code and industry practices. In addition, the applicant will submit as-builts. So the county will have as-builts of how exactly everything was installed. And it'll be set up to the PDF and a CAD file, so they're easy for you to access within your system. Throughout the life of the project, the applicant is responsible for an annual inspection providing records to the county. So every year they're going to be providing an annual inspection report to the county. Throughout the life of the project, the appearance and maintenance will be on there, need to be taken care of. Also, throughout the life of the project, the applicant will be required to provide mitigation for any issues relating to any type of signal interference. So if anything comes up, they'll have to be able to comply with that and resolve that and mitigate that. Any site plan that is approved will be able to be transferable or assigned to another party within 30 days. And the thing is, it's just the county needs to know when that happens within 30 days, that if it gets transferred to another party, the county needs to be notified of that. Within 1 year of the project completion, the applicant will conduct a shadow flicker analysis and demonstrate to the county that the project meets the shadow flicker requirements. Within 1 year of the project operating, the applicant will conduct a sound study demonstrating that the project meets all sound requirements. The county may require the applicant to continually submit sound studies showing that the project is still meeting the requirements even after just the 1 year mark. And then some additional considerations we're going to go through in reference to there's 17 sections in Newark Township, and then there's one section in North Star Township that these turbines are proposed in. Things that we're going to be looking at are following the ordinance, the distance, the setbacks to occupied buildings, setbacks from property lines, boundaries within non-participating parcels, setbacks to road right-of-ways. And these are all, when we do all of these measurements, it's all based on the GIS. And so we're scaling this off of plans that they have given us. And so we're very close. We haven't done it in the field. I just want you guys to know we're scaling this off of plans that were provided. And then also Google Earth. And another thing I just wanted to note that the applicant submitted materials that included shadow flicker and sound that measured both the existing turbines, because the county has existing turbines, and proposed turbines in the township. And the proposed memo basically talked about the shadow flicker and sound to residents who live in both of the project areas. And then in our review, the submittal indicated that the combined shadow flicker for existing and proposed turbines will generally cause an increase in shadow flicker for the residents, but it does not combine together the project. They will not create any additional flicker on homes that exceeds the ordinance of 30 hours a year. It'll increase, but just won't exceed the 30 hours a year. And similarly for the sound, our review indicates that the sound levels in the township will generally increase the combined sound from the existing and proposed turbines, but it will not create sound over 55 decibels of a habitable structure within the zoning ordinance requirements. But just to let you know that we've looked at both of those, so it's all together. We've looked at all that together. And then lastly, there are areas within the county's zoning ordinance, the overlay district, that are exclusion zones. And there are no, these turbines are not located anywhere near any of the exclusion zones within both of these townships. Just wanted to note that. Okay, now we're going to get into the fun. So submitted, and if you would like to see, we did bring with all the plans. We kind of printed out plans at full scale if you wanted to take a look at them at a later date. But what we try to do in our report is do a snippet of each of the areas of the turbines in each of the sections. And we're going to walk you through. Let's go to this one, Jenny. Can we go this one? Just generally what we're looking at of when we're just what we're measuring, what we're looking at when we're measuring it. So if the center, the little 3 point in the middle, that's our turbine, and to the black dash that's on the outside edge, that is the study that has been done post design, post construction. That is our 55 decibels. That was the sound decibel line. The blue line is to a non-participating parcel or to a public right-of-way. So all of the plans that we received, and if you had.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Anytime you can ask a question.
Absolutely.
55 decibels at that range. That's what you're saying, that's all it makes? Really?
That's what the studies, I'm just sure that line, that's just a representation of the line that's on the plans to the left. As we reviewed the lines to the plans on the left, those are, can you point to the?
Well, that black line don't mean squat, because I got a sound study right here that at 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet, they're making 80 decibels. Your own sound study on the Polaris project. Well, just skip that 55 decimal ring here, doesn't mean a thing.
So I think if I could, so I'm Kyle O'Mara, I'm the legal counsel. There is a condition on the special land use permit that requires actual measurement of sound after construction as well. So if you don't believe the modeling, there is an obligation.
I want a record saying that little black line on there means squat, okay? That's all. And I understand you do a sound study after the fact.
Yes, and by me doing this, it would be the county would retain someone, or the county would verify. Yes.
Yeah, a third party.
Yeah, third party.
A
Yes.
third party would do the sound study. It would not be the applicant. It would be a third party that the county would want to hire to do a sound study.
When you put it up there like that, you're implying that 55 decimal is right on that black.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
You're
That's
not
just
implying that.
no. That's just a graphic. I was just trying to show you graphically. If you looked at the site plans, if you looked at all of these site plans that were submitted to you, if you looked at all of those, I was just trying to show you this is just like the legend on the right hand side, and I was just talking through just what those lines represent on that plan. Absolutely, that's not what I meant at all. It was just more of a legend of what the colors and the dashes and the lines were. So that confused you. I apologize.
Well, to say that 55 decibels at that range, is not right.
Right, and we'll go, and why don't we just not do that? Let's just go to the report, and I'll show you the distance onto the on the report and how we measure down to the report. So if you look at that plan that Jenny has up there right now, so those are the plans that you received, and so the blue dashed line, the closest to the turbine, the blue dashed line is your setback line to non-participating parcels and to a public right-of-way, and that is measured by up to the hub of the turbine 1.5 times, and you'll see as we go through that. That's like so that that is met or not met, and we'll talk through each one of those. We measure each one of those for each of these turbines. The next circle out was the sound decibel line, which is that black decibel line that was measured, that a study that the applicant has done as a study of where that, what the sound decibel line would be. The green line is to an occupied building. That would be the distance, that would be the minimum distance to an occupied building. And so as we review these plans, we are making sure that there are no occupied buildings, non-participating parcels that are near, or roads near the green, the blue, and the black lines. That was one of our tasks. The red dash line that you see on here are all of your collection lines that are going underground. So in the report, we talk about collection lines, and those are the collection lines that connect the turbines to each other. The gray line on here is the access road going to the turbine. And all of these turbines are on participating parcels. So all of this, the access road and the turbine are all on participating parcels. Our biggest goal of this is to make sure that that turbine, the sound, the flicker, the road are not on non-participating parcels. That's really our biggest goal as we look through this. Oh, and then of course the flicker. So the flicker is the shadow flicker of, and the way the ordinance reads is that you have 30 hours. So that flicker can be on a structure for 30 hours a year. If it exceeds it, that's that black dash line that's all the way around there. And I know the applicant will have specialists here that when they get into the presentation, they can talk to that. But that black dash line, as they did their studies, shows everything inside of that, right? Inside of that line is going to be past, or is going to have 30 hours or more. These are all for non-participating. If it's outside of that, it's for everybody. I'm sorry, for everybody on that. But so you're going to see it in our report. Sorry about that. In our report, that line crosses over some buildings, and so we call out where we think that study needs to be identified, and we need to make sure that prior to construction that a detailed sound study or a detailed flicker study is run, because if it needs to be designed or curtailed, and they say curtailing it, that they just design it so it doesn't run as long, or they slow it down. You guys can talk more to the minutia and the detail of that. Anyway, so let's get into the report if we could. So the first one is our Newark Township section 14. Okay, the comments below are based on conformance with the Gratiot County zoning ordinance. And this first turbine is turbine T37, T33 in section 14. And basically this is a summary of how the proposed wind turbines comply with your chapter 14.4 for the ordinance. In the items highlighted in green on the right-hand side, that in our observation, they comply with the zoning ordinance. If the items are in orange, the items will need to be considered. We'll do some type of consideration on them. And so as we walk through the first one, the occupied building. So the height of the hub is half of the hub height. The up to hub height, excuse me, is 290.7 feet. Times 2 makes 581 feet, or 1,000 feet. When we measured for T37, it's 1,199 feet. So that meets the zoning ordinance requirements for distance to an occupied building. So that one meets the ordinance. Same then for T33, when we measured that 2 times the hub height, it's 1,833 feet. So T37 and T33 both meet to the nearest occupied building. That is, they're far enough away so that they meet the ordinance requirement. For shadow flicker, no more than 30 hours per year. Both of those turbines do not impact are not going over 30 hours per year. So we put check marks there saying that they are in compliance with the ordinance. Setbacks from a property line, from a non-participating property line parcel is 1.5 times the hub height, which is 290.7 feet, which is equal to 436 feet. For T37, the property line to the closest non-participating parcel is 1,119 feet. And for T33, the closest non-participating parcel is 694 feet. So those both meet the ordinance requirements. Boundaries with non-participating parcels, the hub height, again, is 1.5 times 290. The same numbers that we just looked at, 1,119 and 694 feet. So they both meet the requirements of the ordinance. Setback from the road right of way, 400 feet, 1.5 times 290 feet equals 463 feet. For both the T37 and T33, it's 1,086 feet and 1,608 feet. Railroads and roads to trails all meet the distance to railroads and trails. We don't have those through. They're not really, there's nothing that showed any type of impact. And then in reference to the noise, looking at the noise study, 55 decibels to the closest structure, they all meet the ordinance requirements.
Can you give us just a quick definition of what shadow flicker is? Because that's always the most confusing to me.
Now, would it be okay if I ask the applicant to do that? Because I know that they talked to it. I mean, I know it. I mean, I would give you my layman observation of it, but if they could probably give you a little bit more of the detail on it, would that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
So shadow flicker, I think we're going to give a little presentation later, but shadow flicker basically is caused when the blades are rotating in between where the sun is shining and the receptor. And the shadow flicker will change depending on obviously the location of the sun during the day and also during the seasons it progresses. And just real quickly to say that the shadow flicker model that we run that counts up this shadow flicker time takes into consideration all of the sun angles during the entire time of the year, all day long, and then all through the year. And so when she mentions 30 annual hours of shadow flicker, that is combining all of the turbines that might fall, it might have shadow flicker that might fall on a receptor. It's not just one turbine falling on a receptor. But it is kind of it's a on and off, it is a passing of the blades in front of the sun. So that's what causes kind of a flicker effect. It's not the same thing as a light flashing, though. It doesn't get brighter, it's just more of a shadow passing.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
No, that kind of explains it. I was just thinking, it's one of those things that we hear about it, and I always lose the definition of it. So
We are going to show some slides later to
Okay.
make it a little bit more in-depth.
thank you.
You bet.
If you could, for our records, could you just state your
I'm
name?
sorry, yes. Joanne Blank, let's stand so I can solve.
Thank you.
And when they run their study on the shadow flicker, the way that we have talked through it, there's no vegetation. So, we're not going to ever rely that vegetation would ever assist with the shadow flicker, just because you never know what vegetation is going to do. If it has leaves on it or not, if it decides to die or something, you know what I mean? So as they run the study, in the report, it talks about with vegetation or without vegetation. When we look at this it's without vegetation. So I guess we say the worst case scenario, because just if the vegetation is there, it's an added bonus, but that's not the curtailment that we would be looking for. It would have to be something different.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the next in our Newark Township is section 15. And Chair, if people have comments, like you said, just if they want to have comments and questions on the turbines, just bring it on up and as we pull it up. A lot of these are very similar. And if it's marked in green, I can walk through each one of them like I just did, or we can walk through each one and see if we have questions. And then when we do have ones that we've identified as issues, we could just talk to those. If that.
Let's do that.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that. Is everybody else comfortable with that?
That work, okay. So in section 15, the turbine is T16. And as we looked at this, as we looked at this, I was gonna try and pronounce my names on my roads, but I'm not gonna try that. So anyway, this particular location, they meet all of the, they meet all of the ordinance requirements. So we do not have any questions or any observations on this one.
All right.
So for section 16 in Newark Township, in section 16, in general, when we walk and we look through this, and we looked at the studies that were provided, we did not, nothing was noted. But if you go to the next page, we did want to identify that from a shadow flicker standpoint, without vegetation on the, oops, excuse me. And they call the buildings receptors, but they're basically the structures that are out there. We did notice that without vegetation, it's 28 hours and 40 minutes, which is pretty close to 30 hours. And so we just really wanted to identify that we really want to keep an eye on this. And so as we go through, permitting, we want to make sure that that's run and we get a good understanding of the shadow flicker on that particular structure. It wasn't flagged through the study because the study shows it as under 30 hours, but we are just flagging that just as an observation as we go through this process, just to keep your eyes on this one. We just don't want to make sure we exceed it.
Excuse me. So prior to construction, the applicant will need to provide a final procurement data for the project layout.
Right. So
Applicant does that.
the applicant does that. So they need to, prior to any construction or permitting, because as they run these, if they end up moving them a distance, a couple feet here, a couple feet there, they have to provide the county the final curtailment and what.
Procurement plan.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, they might not
Where
build
does
it.
that go, or who gets that?
It would go to the county.
The planning commission will get that?
Yes. And also keep in mind, they might not build all the turbines either. It's just, the final at construction is when when the commission will know exactly where everything is going.
So there's quite a few in here. In your 44 pages, there's quite a few people that need curtailment plans.
Correct.
Do they know it, or are you just gonna surprise them?
The residents,
Yes.
well, they'll be in the reports. We don't have a notification process. Is that what you're
Well, I just
thinking?
think they ought to, they might have something going on that they need to know this ahead of time.
Well, the goal, yeah, I mean, the goal is that the curtailment they have to be under 30 hours regardless.
Right.
And so they shouldn't have any impact. The way the ordinance reads, everything has to be 30 hours or less.
You have some in here, you have one in here in particular, 60 hours. And 40 hours, and 50 hours.
Right, and I believe that they have a,
40, 30, 44 hours, and 60 hours, 68 hours.
right. And again, I am only reporting what the applicant has submitted. So when the applicant comes up, they can talk a little bit more about that as well, but I'm just reporting to the commission so you are aware of what you're calling out. So we're presenting that to you, so you know exactly what was presented to you in your documents. So that was one thing we just wanted to flag for the commission, and then the other thing was the access road. At this, excuse me, if you look up on the plan, you can see the access road is very close to a non-participating parcel. And we have this many times through the report, and we talk, and the applicant has submitted some additional information, and I believe we'll probably address the commission once we get done. Once we get done with our presentation, they'll address some of our questions. But it just seems that it's very close proximity. The site plan shows that the road is very close to a non-participating parcel, and we just wanted to flag that and bring that to the commission's attention. Any other questions on that one? All right, section 18. So again, commission, in section 18, it is turbine T-09. And, you know, as we look at occupied buildings, shadow flicker, setbacks, property lines, boundaries, they are all in compliance with the zoning ordinance. Unless there's any questions on that, we can go to section 18, laydown yard, the laydown yard that's in section 18. Now, again, once what we've talked about, I'm going to go through here and have questions that for the applicant. And then the idea was after we got done going through your report, then the applicant could address the commission and answer some of the questions that we had in here as well. So the laydown yard. So in general, the laydown yard, the applicant has provided the necessary information on the site plans to demonstrate compliance with the applicable zoning district setback requirements. The proposed site for the laydown yard is about 11.65 acres. Things that we've identified are some of the some construction issues that we were noticed on the plans, some of the construction base, things that were constructability questions that we had. Those will have to be, these plans will have to be updated, and a final construction set of documents would have to be submitted and reviewed prior to any type of permitting or construction. We just started walking through here and noting things that we noticed on the plans that were submitted to us.
What was the decision from the Green Commission?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
What was the decision from the Green Commission?
So the Drain Commission, that's up to the applicant to talk to all of that. But the status of the Drain Commission's approval for the laydown yard, that's a question that we had to the applicant. So if it's okay with you, I mean, they can answer it right now if you'd like them to. It's up to you guys, or they can answer it all at the, because they need to kind of talk about the substation to you guys and talk about the laydown yard to you guys, because we do have quite a few questions in here about both of those. And it just seemed, what we were hoping is that if they could talk to it in general all at once, it might be easier to hear the whole.
That's fine.
If that, it's just whatever works. Okay.
Yeah, we can wait.
Okay. I'll go fast. Okay. So the laydown yard, they're proposing 12 parking spots and 216 spaces on the south side of the office. Let's see, the driveways, we have some questions on the driveways. As you can see, 5 driveways were proposed, and we needed some dimensions to show the distance between the driveways. Again, the applicant's going to need to work with the road commission to ensure the proposed driveway complies with all of the zoning ordinance and 15.6. Lighting, in reference to the lighting that's proposed out there, there's not a detailed lighting plan. The night sky type of lighting is what we need, so it's a direct lighting that's going down, so we'll need details on the light for further review. Control from the site, anything in section 2.9, it requires that any measures that need to be taken to minimize any type of odors or vapors or glare or smoke from the use of the properties. And we need to make sure that all of those are identified. Temporary uses. We need to know what the construction schedule is going to be. And I believe, like I said, the applicant has submitted some additional information. They can talk to all of the questions on the temporary uses that we have. The batch plant, the county want to impose conditions to limit potential impacts from the batch plant, such as dust, impacts to adjacent properties, noise, conditions of equipment. Those are just things we need to consider as we're going through this process. And then also from the end, the final plans are going to be the final engineering plan, and designs are going to need to be provided for to describe the actual grading, drainage, and just full construction documents prior to approval. And then at the bottom there, we do list a list of questions. We list 5 questions. Notes on the site plan says storage on the site will be exclusive. What and where are the storage plans? Storage, where are the components going to be? Is the applicant proposing a sign? If so, where is it going to be installed? And then will silt fence remain in the place for the life of the proposed yard? What's the height of the topsoil pile? And then what are the hours of operations? Again, after we get done going through this, both the laydown yard and the substation, we'll have the applicant go through that in a little bit more detail. So recommendations just from as your consultant reviewing this, the site plan generally meets the criteria of the zoning ordinance, with a few additional items that do remain. So a conditional approval is recommended, and then will allow staff to verify the updated site plan is in compliance with the zoning ordinance. So if you consider to go ahead with this, it could be conditional, but you'd have to have an updated plan. Section, Newark Township, section 19. So as we look at this is for T10 turbine. And you can see, commissioners, you talked about, this one does have a shadow flicker. Two structures. And you can see Jenny's kind of circling. You can see that yellow line crosses over the building, and those blue dots, those are ones that are identified to have a shadow flicker that goes over the extended 30 hours. And for each one of those, there would have to be, again, a curtailment plan put in place for both of those receptors. This is just showing you the proximity. If you see the line, that yellow line right there, that's going through. It's usually the line goes adjacent or to the property. It's going through the structure. So once again, we're just flagging that for the commission to be aware that we really need to observe this particular, because it says it's 23 hours on this particular structure. We'll need to have an updated shadow flicker on this particular building just to make sure that it's on the outside edge of that building and what that shadow flicker actually is.
So when you look at the flicker, let's say it's 30 hours, if it's the October, what do you do? I mean, is it like, oh, we can do 28 hours up until October and then we're gonna shut it off? What's the mechanism?
Of how to manage it?
Yes.
So I can turn it again to the applicant, because it's really how the timing of the blade, and they do a whole kind of a science behind it. Knowing their upfront study, they understand that they're going to have to manage this throughout that year to stay within that 300. And so if you would like, they can give you a quick overview of how they manage that. Would you like that?
Yeah, but if I'm that house, I want to know how you're going to manage it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Sure, so as Cindy said, again, Joanne Blank from Standard Consultants there. The model will tell us if it's expected that the shadow will exceed 30 hours per year. It's not that it's gonna happen all throughout the year. The model tells us exactly when the potential is for that shadow to fall on that house. And so the curtailment is that we'll actually shut down the turbines for X number of hours of the year. And it's not that they would wait until October to do it. We would know in advance. We would look at the model and say, oh, there's 34 hours expected. So then the owner would say, we're going to turn off the turbines on July 5th through the 30th for 2 hours each day, because they happen to be falling, the shadow is expected to fall on that home. So the turbines will actually just stop.
Okay.
And they would document all of that to be assured that they're turning off that turbine so that it keeps the shadow flicker under 30 hours.
Thank you.
Sure.
Remember, because as a condition, if to approve it, they would have to give you a curtailment plan. So that's all these conditions that you would want to consider as you go through this process. And now the last on this particular section is the underground collection line. You can see the line and its proximity to the non-participating parcel. And our question on many of these to the applicant is, you know, what is the buffer distance between that and the non-participating parcel and on the plans, and just how is that going to be handled, because some of those are very close to those non-participating parcels. So then in Newark Township, section 20, these have turbines T12 and T83. In general, as you look at the occupied building, the shadow flicker and the setback and the boundaries, all of it is in the right of way. They're all within compliance with the ordinance requirements. But we just, again, on this particular one, we want to understand the underground collection line, the proposed collection line to the west of T88 is very close to the non-participating parcel line. And then what's, again, our question is, what's the distance, what's the buffer distance of that collection line close to the non-participating property? The goal of this is if they're not participating, we want to make sure that they are not impacted by this.
We don't see the collection line being too close to somebody, the problem, because once it's underground, it's gone.
I think it's a disturbance when they install it. We want to make sure that if they're going to be installing that, they're not going to be on the non-participating property.
The best person to decide where the collection line goes is the property owner. Does he know where his drain tile is?
Oh, absolutely.
You can cut 30 drain tiles going across a section, or you can cut one. Big difference. So that's my suggestion. You put it in there that the property owner decides where the collection line goes.
And then working with the applicant. And I think that they can talk to that, but I believe that that's probably a process that they go through. Our observation is, our biggest deal is we want to make sure that those non-participating parcels do not have trenching equipment on their property.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean, during construction. They should not be impacted by this at all. Okay, that was, yeah. So this is 22, is that next?
21.
Oh, 21. That was 21. No, okay, this is 21. Okay. Yeah, okay, so now, so section 21. So again, in 21, as you look at 21, all the occupied building, the shadow flicker, the setbacks, the boundaries, the noise, all of that is all within compliance of our ordinance. It's, again, our observation is that the access road, the site plan shows that the access road to turbine 21 is very close to non-participating parcels. And again, the question is, how does the applicant plan to site access roads from non-participating parcels? So the next section is section 22. And on this one, this is for T31. The, again, occupied building, shadow flicker, property line, boundaries, noise, all are within the ordinance requirements. And so this says really no other questions unless the commission or anybody else has any questions on this particular location. Section 23. Again, section 23 is, it has one turbine, it's T34. Again, the occupied building, shadow flicker, property line, setbacks, noise, all are within our ordinance requirements. And again, we have an observation that turbine 34 is very close to a non-participating parcel. And how far does the applicant plan to site the roads for non-participating parcels?
Do we know about the non-participating person? Are they in favor of it? Are they?
Do we know if they're non-participating, what now?
I just wondered, you said they're within a certain amount of a non-participating parcel. So do we know how they feel about it?
I think that would probably be a question.
I'm just
for-
curious.
Yeah,
question for
yeah,
the
that would be
applicant.
a question if the applicant has any communication with the non-participating parcels. As your consultant, the observation, if they're non-participating, they don't want any part of it. And so I think that's our observation, that the closer anything that's happening with this proposed project to these non-participating parcels, we want to make sure that they are, they are not affected by any of it.
So you mentioned it, so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, section 26 has two turbines on it, T36 and T38. Again, these have occupied building, shadow flicker, setbacks, boundaries, and noise are all within the ordinance requirements. We did note, though, that the access road, the site plan shows that the access road to turbine 36 is very close to a non-participating parcel. And then again, is how far does the applicant plan to site access roads for non-participating parcels. And then also on this one, the underground collection line, the proposed underground collection line, you want to show them the plan a little bit? The underground collection line to T38 is sited close to a non-participating parcel. Now, what is the buffer distance the applicant plans for the collection lines close to the non-participating property?
Are there any suggestion that the planning commission come up with that distance?
No, I'm asking the question to the applicant, what their distance is, so the planning commission can hear what that buffer is, what their recommendation is, and the planning commission can listen to it and, decide if that's reasonable or not reasonable. Sheriff, at any time you would like us to go to Google Earth and pull up the actual plans, or the commission would, just let us know, besides just these. That was 26, that was 27, right? 27, section 27. All right, section 27, your T30 turbine meets, which is toward the north of this section, meets all the occupied building, shadow flicker, setbacks, and noise, and the boundaries requirements within the ordinance. Your T29 turbine that is proposed, the shadow flicker is going to have to be curtailed. And that is flagged.
And that is a participating parcel, correct?
Can you pull it up? I'll have her pull it up so it's easier for us to see it.
Okay. That's Bosley's, I think.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
You want to go to this one or just something for everything? Hmm?
That's where this was.
Hmm?
This was.
That's what you just written out, just, yeah, just show them the, yeah, that's just, it's all good. Yeah, just you can see, if you see where she's putting the little circle, that's where the location of it is. And then the picture that's in your document is just an aerial of it.
Is that the only one that we need to worry about the flicker, or is there another one?
There's more.
Okay.
On this particular section,
Yes.
just on this particular section, any of them that we have highlighted in the orange under shadow flicker in this whole report would be ones that we would want to make sure that we have a curtailment plan for. Okay. So our next one is section 28. On this one, we have 3 turbines, T22, T23, and T27. All of them, as we do the measurements, meet the zoning regulations, but we do want to point out that the proximity of the occupied building to T22, the minimal is 1,000 feet and the measurement is 1,000 feet, 3 foot. So according to the site plans, the occupied building on that is 1,000 feet, 3 foot. The required minimum is 1,000 foot. The particular siting, the siting of that will need to be field verified. Basically, that turbine is going to need to be field verified prior to construction. If this turbine needs to be moved after site plan approval, it cannot be shifted any closer to the occupied building. We just want to make sure, because it's so close, it really needs to be field located to make sure that we're within the right distance, and we don't want to make sure it's any closer. And if that's truly what we're identifying here, is it just we really want to make sure there's field verification on all of this. Again, the access road to T22 is very close to non-participating parcels. And how is the applicant planning to site the access roads? Underground, again, underground collection lines on this by T22 is very close to non-participating parcels. And what is the buffer distance to that how was the applicant plan for the buffer distance? As well as for T27, the underground collection line is close to a non-participating parcels. And we identify these, Commissioner, just to make sure that as we look at these for the next round of review on these plans, that all of these are identified and we just are flagging these, so you're just aware. So there's things that we need to be looking at. Section 30. Section 30 is per all of the regulations, and again, it meets all of the zoning regulations for turbine T14, excuse me. And then again, on this one, we have the underground collection line is very close on T13 to a non-participating parcel. And just are identifying that and flagging that.
13 has flicker problems. Is that what you said?
Down on the wrong one.
The access road,
Yeah.
the collection line, I'm sorry.
What's that?
It was a collection one.
I said collection line, didn't I? Did I say, yeah. Did I say access road? Oh. Okay,
She just wanted to know if there's no further reflection.
oh, okay, I got it. Okay. All right, section 31. Section 31, there are 2 turbines on this section. T18 is within all of the zoning ordinance requirements for building, occupied building, flicker, setbacks, and noise. T17 is further consideration for the shadow flicker. And that's there at the bottom of the kind of circle where that's at, the little blue dot on there. At the bottom there. Again, the study showed that it was without vegetation 31 hours and 37 minutes. So this one will have to be curtailed. It'll have to have a curtailment plan to it in order to be in the 30 hours a year. Again, with this, the access roads, the underground collection line, in reference to T13 are very close to non-participating parcels, and we just need to understand the process of the applicant plans to buffer both the distance of the collection line and the access road. And just to note that the transmission line, which is the purple at the top of this, is a proposed transmission line to the north of T18, and it runs on the north portion of the section, just so you had an idea that on this particular section, that was where the transmission line.
Consumers also have an easement right there.
105, please.
That's how that's their curtailment on it.
That's just something they add to the turbine.
Correct. And that's how they would manage it. That's the study. Do you mind talking to the NRO?
Good evening, my name is Mike Hankard, Hankard Environmental, Rome, Wisconsin. NRO stands for Noise Reduced Operations. So
Oh, down there. Oh, I don't think so. Okay.
turbines come with the ability to spin up to a certain speed, say 14 revolutions per minute. But the amount of noise the turbine puts out is directly related to how fast it spins. So if you need the turbine to be quieter, we will program it to not spin as fast as it can. Basically, you're turning it down. That's all you're doing. Because your turbine might be located in a spot where you want it, but it's close enough to a house to warrant that it needs to be quiet. So instead of not locating that turbine or moving it, your better option sometimes is to turn it down.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Section 34. Section 34 has turbines 45 and 28. Again, those 2 turbines do, when we run it through the ordinance requirements, it does meet all of the setback, flicker, noise requirements. This section also houses the substation. Again, we've asked the applicant to talk more in detail about the substation, and we're almost done. So they'll be able to talk about both the lay down yard and the substation. Oops, I just looked through it. But so for the substation, the setback requirements, the applicant has provided the necessary information on the site plan to demonstrate compliance with the zoning ordinance and the setback requirements. Fencing, the applicant has proposed a fence around the farm and the ITC substation. And again, the applicant has a group here to be able to talk to the substation in a full detail so we can really totally understand it this evening. We asked how tall the fence was going to be, if it was going to be barbed wire. We just needed to understand what was going to be proposed around. It said there's going to be a fence. We just needed to make sure it's at least 6 foot in height. And we need to understand gates and just some general site information that we will need updated site plans to be able to give us more information on. we asked questions at where does the applicant intend to subdivide the lot and the parcel of the subsection that it runs on? Is the applicant applying for the site plan approval for both the substation on behalf of ITC? Does the provided site plan include all the details of ITC substation in addition to the project substation? How many trees will be removed for the collection lines and access drives? And then is there any wetland permitting that's going to be required? The applicant doesn't show any type of lighting on the site plan. Do they intend to have lighting on the site? Where's the parking on the plan? The applicant has shown signage details. We want to know where those intend to be and how they're going to be installed.
Is there any wetlands that we have to worry about?
That was not, we didn't see any that were on the plan, but if there's any permitting, they'd have to be able to show us the permitting for that. If there was any wetlands or anything like that, they'd have to be able to provide us with those information. Just because of the surfacing, we need to make sure we understand the surfacing and all the stormwater management and all the runoff. And so all of those, so we're gonna need a detailed construction documents for the substation, showing all of, for the permitting, for the road commission, drain commission, all of those are gonna need to be presented and prepared and presented to the planning commission. We talked about stockpiles and fencing. We just need to understand what all of those things are going to be on site, so we know it's really going to happen on this site. Again, I know the applicant's going to talk to about it. They did send up some supplemental information on the substation and the laydown yard, and can talk to that as well. The site plan in general meets the criteria of the zoning ordinance with the additional items that we talked about. All right, so if we go to section 35. Section 35 has one turbine on it, T40. And on this one, we do show that the shadow flicker will need to be identified. It will need to be curtailed. Excuse me. The access road is again for turbine 40 is close to non-participating parcel, and we need to understand how that is going to be addressed. And then again, the purple on the plan shows the transmission line to the south of the turbine, and it runs through the southern portion of that section. Okay. Section 36. Section 36, turbine T39. In observations, and I know the applicant has now presented an affidavit, but there is a structure that is 560 feet to the turbine. And there you go. So this just shows it a little bit closer. So Jenny's outlining it, I don't know if you can see it, but that is 300 or 560 feet to the turbine. And so our question is on that is, it looks like it's a farm structure. We need more information from the applicant. The applicant has presented an affidavit, and Commissioner Chair, if you would like, if I could have the applicant speak to this, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, Fred Short here from Invenergy. So this structure you see here is a barn that is located on the same parcel as the turbine. So the same landowner will have that turbine and the barn. This is where the turbine location worked for his farming operation and was suitable for what he wanted to do with his land. So he provided an affidavit saying that this is just a barn, not an occupied structure, and he's got no concern with it. And he also wrote an additional letter that we brought today, just voicing his support for this location project. Happy to answer any further questions or go through that affidavit, but that's why this was cited where it was.
And you all have received a copy of that affidavit. I think I sent that out last week.
And then on this one, you'll notice for the shadow flicker, for both of those turbines, there are 4 different receptors or residents or buildings that will need to be curtailed.
This is 36 and what? 36 and 30, I'm sorry, 39 and 57. Thank you.
Okay. And again, with this particular section, the transmission line runs through the southern portion of the site, of the section, and then we could talk about the occupied building. So now we are in North Star Township, section 31. And there are 2 turbines in this section. T61 meets all of the which is to the north, and if you look at the parcel, it meets all of the zoning regulations and requirements. And T84, which is to the bottom south eastern portion, will need to have curtailment for that particular turbine. And again, I just wanted to note that all of the curtailment will not, any of the curtailment vegetation will not be part of that curtailment plan. It's just whatever it is. Like I said, the vegetation is there, that's an added bonus, but it is not part of the study. It's not included in the study. It's with the curtailment, as we look at the curtailment.
You skipped page 42.
Oh, I did?
What?
42? Did I? Oh, I did.
You touched on that. You did.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just didn't read it. I'm sorry. I just didn't read it because those are, so on page 42, those show the 3 different receptors or buildings that will need to be curtailed for shadow flicker. And that shows what the hours, without vegetation, what the hours are. And so all 3 of those will need to be, and the receptors, they have their numbers on them as 0159, 0166, and 0189. Go ahead.
One more.
Oh, I missed one. Oh, okay, so, and then also 0154. So if we go to that first page, Jen, at the bottom there, there was 4. There was 0154, 0159, 0156, or 0166, and 0189 are the receptors or buildings or homes that are going to have, they're going to get 30 hours or less, but those turbines, they're going to be curtailed.
All right, any other questions for Cindy or her team before we move on to our applicant's presentation and answers?
Excuse me, on page 44, we had one with 68 hours of shadow flicker.
Yes, that's one that will need to be curtailed, and Invenergy can, or Fred can speak to that.
That's a lot.
And so if the commission, if you guys have any other questions, just let us know as we go through it, but with all the questions that we asked, we'd ask the applicant to then respond to it, and I think they might even have like a little PowerPoint as well. I don't know if you guys want to respond to it first, or if then you want to, however you want to handle it.
Yeah, it was all right with the planning commission. We have a few slides together that I think will sort of help talk through some of the questions that you proposed and that Spicer proposed as well. So if we could pull those up, we can kind of lead into it. And then if you pose the questions as they come up, I think that would work for us to address them then. We can do that from over here or come up to the stand. There. Yeah. All right, good evening, everyone. Oh, I'm gonna use this.
Please state your name.
You're all the way back.
No, you're good.
Too much to add. Okay. Yeah, that's not what we were. I won't touch it. All right, Fred Short here from Invenergy, working on the Heartland Farms Wind Project. For those of you that don't know me, I am one of the project developers, working with Jory Fox out here, who you are all familiar with as well. She was unable to make it tonight, but we appreciate your time and the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about this project and field any questions that you have. So real quick, I'm just going to give a high-level overview of kind of where this project is now, what's happened since the last time we were in front of you, give a quick glimpse into the partnerships and economic benefits we believe this project will be creating. And then we're going to touch quickly on kind of what it looks like going forward. After that, I'm going to rely on some of our experts over here that are much smarter than myself to talk you through some of the more technical aspects of it with the substation and laydown yard and other questions you may have. And then at the end, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have or Spicer has as a result of the presentation. All right, so this is the high-level snapshot of the Heartland Farms projects that we've been working on out here. You were here tonight looking for special land use, or sorry, we have special land use permit approval for Newark and North Star Townships, as noted there. And we are here tonight looking for site plan approval. So just to kind of give the summary of what we've done so far is we have already received the special land use permit approval in New Haven, North Shade, Newark, and North Star. And we have also received the site plan approval in New Haven and North Shade. So again, here tonight to review the turbine locations, substation, and laydown yard in Newark, as well as North Star. One thing that I did want to highlight that isn't always captured when you're looking just at those turbine locations on the site plan is the partnerships that are created through this process. First and foremost, these projects do not come together without supportive landowners. We have had the opportunity to work with countless landowners throughout this county, and for this project in particular, there are over 250 local families participating, and they are the ones that make these projects possible. There are over 100 families in Newark and North Star Townships alone, which is what we're here on behalf of them tonight for this application. And I think there was a lot of questions kind of coming up through that report, why are turbines sited where they are, access roads where they are, collection lines. That is really driven by these partnerships. So people sign up their land, and it's not just, okay, you're signed up, we can put things where we want. There are clauses in the agreements that we work with them on where the location of the facilities are, everything from the turbine location, the access road, and the collection design. Because to Mark's point, it is hugely important that you site that collection line in a way that avoids drain tile to the extent possible. So, you'll see some of these things, it's not necessarily straight A to B, like would be the most economical way for us to do it, but we do, work with them to find a way to weave through the drain tile. And same thing for the turbine locations. Some of those receptors that are highlighted throughout the report that are close to or over 30 hours, you'll notice if you look on the site plans, they are on the same parcel as that house that was flagged. Those people know exactly where that's going and that there is going to be some shadow flicker. Again, no one is going to exceed 30 hours because that's the ordinance limit. So we say to them, look, we realize that if there was no curtailment, this one could be over, but we are going to work with you as this is where you want the turbine location on your farm. This is where it's suitable for your farming operation. And we will make sure we meet our obligations to make sure that it is permissible under the zoning ordinance. Same thing with access roads. We can have people talk about the measures we take to ensure that we don't go on non-participants, because that's very important to us. But often farmers don't want that road right through the middle of their field. They absolutely use these roads to haul equipment on and off their fields, especially when they're wet. But it is really more conducive for them to do so on the outskirts of their fields, so they don't have to worry about it when they're plowing or harvesting or doing their other farming activities. Looking forward, so we've been out here in front of the planning commission and board for over a year now, talking about our construction timelines, and these have continued to flex a bit as permitting is ongoing. So first and foremost, we are really looking to get forward and finish off this permitting aspect of the project. After we do that, we will be able to better assess what our construction timeline looks like going forward. We do anticipate starting some construction this year if everything goes according to plan on the permitting side. That is likely some access roads and turbine foundations, with some construction slipping into next year as well. Again, we will continue to refine these as we get through sort of the permitting right now. But the main thing I want to make sure is clear to everyone is that we're not going to surprise anyone with construction. It's not going to be one day with big equipment out here. Once we get a better sense of what this construction schedule is looking like, we will be holding pre-construction meetings, both at the county and township levels, to make sure not only our participants, but the rest of the community is prepared for construction to take place. All right, next, these are two aspects that we wanted to touch on specifically. So no different than any other wind projects that's been built here in Gratiot County or anywhere. We will have a substation in a laydown yard. I can give a very basic definition, but if we get technical, we're going to get over my head quickly. So I can also invite some of our experts up to discuss these in more detail if the planning commission or if Spicer would like us to kind of get into the weeds on what we're looking at here.
So the laydown yard is where you kind of keep everything while you're building the turbines.
Yep, and I will say not keep everything because we're not going to deliver all of our components there.
Keep stuff.
Yep, and it'll be a place for people to come congregate in the mornings and get their safety briefings and kind of plan for the day and disperse on the project.
And then what happens when the project is done in the laydown spot?
Yep, so that area will be restored, and I don't know, Jeff, if you would want to talk about sort of that restoration process.
Sure. Jeff Kerr with Energy. Typically that would be restored after we're through with construction, through with reclamation. We'll use it for staging yard, all temporary office facility up until that point. Then at the end of the project, the gravel will be removed. If there's fabric put down before the gravel is installed, it will be removed. It will be compacted, reseeded, put back in the bag. If that's what it was.
Thank you.
So what is the status of the drain commissioner approval?
Yeah, sure. So there are no drains that have been identified here. But I will say, we work very closely with the Drain Commission throughout the entirety of this process and project. And we certainly cross drains multiple times with our collection line and other things. So we need to coordinate with them and enter into a drain crossing agreements. If it were to be that this laydown yard had any impact on a drain, we would be responsible through that agreement to work with the Drain Commission to ensure that there were no adverse impacts. I also don't have much more to say on the presentation here, but I can continue to answer the questions. We can have some of our experts come up to address them as well.
Sure, I would only ask that some of the questions that were in the report, if they could just answer those specifically, that would be probably just helpful. The ones that we had asked in reference to the site plan proposes 5 driveways to the site and does not provide any dimensions to show the distance between the drives. Just what's the thought process on those driveways?
Yeah, I think, yeah. Jim, go on.
I am Jim Griffin, the permitting attorney for the project, and we did submit a written response to a number of the questions Spicer has raised. Hopefully the commission has that information, but concerning the layout yard, there were a number of questions asked, and I think we responded to all of those. So I think Fred just answered the question about the drain. As far as the driveways are cited to meet the 200 feet separation distance. We didn't show that on the site plan, but we have confirmed that we meet the separation distance between driveways. There were questions on the construction schedule. I think Fred has touched on that now. Also questions about the site restoration process for laydown yard. Jeff just responded to that. As far as the specific things that were identified as questions by Spicer, first the laydown yard, the wind turbine components are not stored at the laydown yard. So that's the equipment that's going to be erected. Those go directly to the parcel that they're going to be erected on. So it's not a massive storage yard. Those go directly to the particular site. Question is the applicant proposing a sign? There will be some signage, but it's only to direct the construction operations, the people that are working there or delivering materials to the laydown yard. It's not an advertisement or a business type sign. It's just going to simply be there to direct the people driving the vehicles where they should turn in, where they should turn out. So it's going to be.
And then we'll need the sign ordinance.
It will, yes, but these will be temporary construction signs. These are not going to be permanent signs. Question, will the silt fence remain in place for the life of the proposed laydown yard? The answer is yes. Until that laydown yard is being reclaimed, that will be in position. What is the expected height of the topsoil stockpile? Up to 10 feet. And what are the hours of operation for the laydown yard? 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So the response there. So those were the specific questions Spicer had asked in their staff report. If you have any further questions, as Fred said, we have experts here that have worked on this.
I do. You said 10-foot maximum on storage. You're going to put in a batch plant
On stockpiles.
stockpile. So how high is the batch plant?
I don't know how high the batch plant is.
100 feet.
That brand equipment could be 50, 60 feet.
That's a bunch, yeah. I know.
Stockpiles would be, you know, your
Gravel and sand.
aggregate, your sand, Portland cement, that'd be 10 feet. I think what you're referring to, as I read the notes, is like your topsoil stockpile. And that stockpile would be around 10 feet.
If there are no other. So.
We had there were questions on the substation too. Do you want me to address those now? Since I see that's on the screen, and we have also other people that are experts on substation construction and operation. But I'll go over what we responded to in writing to the Spicer questions. So, first question was: does the applicant intend to apply for a lot split for the parcel? Yes, and that will be done pursuant to local and state requirements. Next question was: is the applicant?
Wait, I'm sorry. So you are applying for a parcel to be split, but then once you're done, you're going to leave that, right?
This is for the substation.
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
there will be,
sorry.
yes.
Got it, got
So
it.
the portion, we don't need the entire
Yeah,
parcel.
right,
for the
right, so
substation.
you're applying.
So the portion, yes, portions that are used, we split, the rest will pay.
Yep. done.
Yeah, no, we switched to,
I
to
know.
your question,
I know.
to the laydown yard, we don't need to do any split. Yeah, no split for the laydown. So the next question was, is the applicant applying for site plan approval for both substations? There's actually two substations. One would be a project substation, one would be an ITC substation. The answer is yes, we are approving, asking site plan approval for both. Now, ITC will build their own substation, but it's an essential part of this project, so we're asking for site plan approval for that also. Next question is how much tree removal will be required for the collection line and access drives to the west of the project substation. No tree removal will be required to the west of the substation. The other question was, is wetland permitting necessary? No wetland permitting will be necessary for the substation location. Next question was, the applicant does not show any lighting on the site plans. Do they intend to have lighting on the site? And yes, lights will be installed on masts and pointed inward to the yard. So we'll meet at the time of construction all the requirements that the county has for lighting. Next question is, will there be parking on site? Yes, there will be some parking on the site as needed for repairs and maintenance.
Will it be fenced? I'm just curious.
Yes, the substation will be fenced.
Yes. Okay.
Next question was, the applicant has shown signage details. Where do they intend to install signage on the site? So the consumer's signage, consumer's energy signage will be installed on the substation fence next to the man gates and truck gates. And warning and danger signs will be installed along the substation perimeter fence every 30 feet. And just so you know, that's a typical design standard for a substation, which are already built and operating in the county and all over the state. So these substations are part of the project, but they're not unique to a wind energy project. One more question here. Will the applicant need any temporary fencing or stockpiles for construction? And the answer, yes, topsoil will be stockpiled for the construction of the substation. So I think there were a number of other comments that were made in the Spicer report, which we to say understood and confirmed. I think just confirming that we understand these are additional construction requirements that need to be complied with, which we confirmed. So I think that takes us through the answers on the substation way down there. Again, if you want further detailed information,
Yeah, and if there's no further questions on any of these aspects right now, I think we can move on, and we have a quick couple slides on both noise and shadow, as those are some of the more complex setbacks that Spicer had gone through. So just to prepare some further clarification on kind of how those studies are done and some of the aspects that we'll have. So I'm going to shut this down. Sounds like a resounding yes.
Mike Anchor, Anchor Environmental, for the applicants. So just quickly, to give you a little information on noise, it's measured in terms of decibels. And we hear pressure, but we quantify it in terms of decibels, no different really than temperature in Fahrenheit. The A, and this, you'll see dBA, so the dB is for decibels, and then the A is for A. Human beings, we have a unique ear that is, it hears certain frequencies better than others, which is why a fire siren, for example, is the frequency it is, because it's trying to get your attention. So the A is a thing that we have on our sound meters and our models that mimic the way the human ear works. It's incredibly ubiquitous. Almost every regulation in the country is written in terms of dBA, so you're in good company there. Some examples: 30 dBA. It's about 30. Very quiet. That's what you'd expect inside the library, inside your bedroom at night. 45 is generally what turbines produce at the closest residence to projects. It can be less, it's generally not a whole lot more. We've never measured anything in excess of 50 across the country. A breeze blowing through the trees is often in that same range. It can produce, a strong wind will produce 50s in the trees. Two people talking is 60 dBA, and a loud truck going down the highway is 85. So it just gives you the range. Turbines make noise when the blades go through the air. So it's not a machine like an engine would be. It's the blades cutting through the air. That's what creates a majority of the sound. And as I mentioned earlier, the faster it spins, the more noise it makes, but these turbines are limited. They can only go so fast. They have a maximum. York County limits noise to 55 dBA at a habitable structure, a house.
That said that third one down there, Gratiot County limits noise to wind energy facilities at 55 dBA and an habitable structure. That's what it says there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Over the past 10 or so years, myself and my company, we've gone out to turbine facilities as they become operational, and we measure sometimes weeks or months. So we know how loud these things are, and we use that information to feed it back into our model so that the model is not just based on hypothetical information, it's based on real world data continually being fed back.
I got it.
You got it. Thank you very much. So we use this validated model of ours to predict, well, what is it going to be at every house within the project, in particular within these two townships that we're talking about. We predict for the loudest case, so we assume all the turbines are on 100%. And we assume that the atmosphere is relatively conducive. I don't know if you've noticed, but some nights you can hear that highway better than others, be it the wind direction or just the stability of the atmosphere. So we try to predict on those worst case nights, just to prove to you that this project will not exceed your limits. As noted earlier, some turbines have to be backed off a little bit, turned down a little bit. To meet limits in certain places, because if a farmer, as was noted, wants the turbine in a certain location, maybe it's best to allow that and then turn it down versus moving it away and allowing it to run. There's so many different constraints. We have produced a report that has been provided to you, I believe, that documents everything we did in terms of how we modeled it, what the levels are, and that demonstrates that the levels at all residences are less than your ordinance. Finally, the applicant is committed to doing a post-construction survey. I heard tonight that, you know, it's a third party, and that's up to you. That's at your will. Oftentimes we would get hired, but if that's a little too much fox starting the hen house for you, then you're free to do whatever you want. I've seen different counties in Michigan do it either way. They're willing to accept the applicant's consultants themselves, or they want to hire someone themselves. Your prerogative. Any questions on noise while I stand before you?
So have you checked, have you done studies on the turbines that are in Gratiot County right now?
I have, yes, at the Polaris project. Mark mentioned that earlier. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Have any of them exceeded the 55?
No.
Okay.
We also measured them in Mason County, and we were in that case hired by the county in this kind of neutral. We had nothing to do with that project, so we brought in as a third party. And we found the levels to be similar there. All right, thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you.
Very much.
Good evening. Again, Joanne Blank with Stantec Consulting, and what I'm going to walk you through here is maybe some of the same things we talked about before with a few graphics to help understand a little better. Just so you know, I'm a professional meteorologist, have advanced degrees in meteorology, which comes in handy for shadow flicker because of course shadow flicker is pretty much driven by the sun and the seasons and the movement of the sun during the day. First of all, shadow flicker is not going to be present everywhere at all times. It's only going to happen in the daytime, and it's only going to happen when the sun is not covered by clouds or overcast sky. You can see by the little graphic down in the lower left that it'll only happen, it happens specifically in the area where the shadow would fall because of the way the sun is behind the turbine and the receptor, which might be an inhabited home, or, is on the opposite side of the blades. Now, if you picture that turbine and the wind is blowing so that those blades are turned to be perpendicular to where we're seeing, you can imagine then that shadow flicker is going to be much diminished from what that largest area would be. So the shadow flicker model does take into account the different directions of the wind in addition to the location of the sun in the sky. It progresses during the day. It's mostly seen in the early mornings and the late evenings because, as we all know, as the sun rises and sets, it's going to throw a longer shadow. So that is generally when that shadow flicker extends out to non-participating properties, etc. The turbines have to be operational and the blades have to be turning, of course, and it definitely diminishes with distance. Not only because of just that it'll only go so far based on the angle of the sun, but also because the atmosphere dissipates the shadow, the differences in the shadows. Generally about a mile at absolute maximum. Further away it gets, the less noticeable it is and the faster it passes any point on the land. I'm not touching that thing. The graphic here just gives you a little bit of an idea of how the shadow flicker falls during the year, and that is dictated again by the location of the sun in the sky during the morning and the evening hours, and then in the winter and spring time. And so, as you can imagine, in the summer when the sun is a little bit higher in the sky, that's when you're going to see the shadow flicker coming down to that southwest a little bit further. And then as the sun travels during the day and in the summer at night, then it's going to extend down to the southeast. And the opposite little butterfly wings to the north are during the winter time. So the shadow model is really a sophisticated piece of software that not only considers the position of all of these different variables, but it looks at it in 1 minute increments throughout the entire year, and it looks at it from every single turn. So when we say that there's X number of hours on a receptor, it is not saying that that's only going to happen from that one turbine. It is from all of the turbines added together that will fit onto there. And let me just see if there's anything else on my little bullets here. That's, and of course, as has been discussed several times here tonight, any shadow flicker that exceeds that 30-hour regulatory limit will be curtailed. And curtailment, as we discussed before, means that the turbines will actually be turned off in order so that there is no shadow flicker. The blades will be locked, and they will be turned off at a time when there would be shadow flicker. They're not going to say, well, it wasn't running for that 10 hours today, so that counts towards the shadow flicker. No. They would have to turn off the turbine at a time when there would normally be shadow flicker falling on that residence. And the good thing about the shadow flicker model is it can be very accurate, and we can tell exactly where and when it's going to start hitting a receptor and when it's going to end And so it's easy to do that in advance versus having to wait till October and say, oh, now they're over 30 hours. We can actually predict when it's going to fall, and that way they can then curtail and know in advance when they're going to curtail. And if you want to go to the next one, I think this one is just a real quick overall graphic. You've seen all of the little individual ones as Cindy was going through it. This is just kind of an overall graphic of that 30-hour line in Gratiot County. It has been modeled using 81 turbines for the entire project, where they're only going to be 72, so the shadow flicker will be less than what is predicted in the study right now. And again, absolutely nothing over 30, they get curtailed to keep that within the regulations. And a post-construction study will be done to verify the accuracy of that. Any questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to just flip to the last one, yeah, I don't need to come back up for this one. But lastly, we just want to thank the commission again for their time and consideration of our application. Again, we've got all of our experts over here. If there are additional questions you would like us to answer as we deliberate the application. And just for your sake, if you have any questions following this meeting, or you come into anyone in the community that has any questions, we do have an office right down the street, 128 North Pine River, next to the post office. And this is the contact information for myself and Jory Fox. We would be happy to set up meetings with anybody you come across, or take phone calls, or answer any other questions that might come up during this process. But again, thank you for your time, and hope to answer any questions that may be helpful.
Thank you. All right, we have included in your packet section 16.3 basis of determination. This is straight from our bylaws. So this just kind of outlines how we make our decision on special use permits. This is going to lay down, you know, what are the facts? Does it meet our ordinance? Does it check all the boxes? So when we make our decisions, we don't, you know, necessarily make those decisions, or we don't make those decisions on anything but what is outlined in our ordinance. So just wanted everybody to be able to take a look at that prior to making our decision tonight on our resolution. We did, everybody does have a copy of the resolution. It is 15 pages.
Yes.
This is the largest resolution I've ever seen for a special use permit. I believe the one that we did for the Polaris project was 2 pages.
Yeah.
That included 53 turbines, I believe. So a little more in here. Just, do you want to speak to this before?
Sure. So I think what I'll do is what I did for the special land use permit. I trust that you have all reviewed the resolution. There was one change that we made prior to the meeting, and then I wanted to hit on its general format, and I'll try to explain some of the length and a few important, I think, conditions, and then open it up to any of you if you have questions for me. So the change, in front of you, you should have a version of the resolution that is a star above the staple. If you go to page 15, there is a condition J, and what that says, and we wanted to be very clear about this, is the shadow flicker, the 30 hours, which is required, that the applicant needs to be under. The model cannot include basically vegetation blocking. They can't assume that. They can't assume that they're going to install blocking for someone, for example, as another way to meet it. It's basically the strict, envisioning it as there's nothing impeding the shadow hitting a home. So that's the change. The way the resolution is structured, if you look at pages 1 through essentially 2, that tells you you had a public hearing, you had this meeting for your site plan, okay? Pages 3 through about halfway through 5 are all the findings that you need to, that the zoning ordinance requires you to make related to site plan criteria. So whether it's if this is an orderly development, whether vehicular and pedestrian circulation is appropriate. And for this type of use, you know, that standard is typically more if you're zoning something with a large parking lot or permanent, you know, in and out traffic, but that's a finding that you have to make for any land use. So that's how pages 3 through the top of 5 work. Page 5, and this is what adds to some of the length, is page 5 through the bottom of 10 should look very familiar to you. Those are all your special land use permit conditions restated. And the reason why we do this is 2 reasons. One, for the enforceability of the conditions, to restate them. And then the second is, if you are looking to make sure so your zoning administrator or Spicer, the determined conditions are complied with, it is sometimes helpful to have them all in one document rather than you're looking, oh, I'm losing track of the special land use permit resolution versus site plan. So that's why we do that. Page 10 through essentially 15, because 16 is your the certification. The bottom of 10 through 15 is essentially the what is outlined in Spicer's report as proposed conditions for the site plan. So you'll see, you know, there's an observation that the site plan didn't depict the appropriate aggregate base, even though the applicant says they will do that, to make sure that the site plan is updated to put things like that. So lighting, fencing, some of the things we talked about. Of those, I wanted to point out a few that I think are important other than the addition. So if you go on page 14, like the Polaris project, like your last project, condition G outlines a process if in the event project improvements need to be moved less than 100 feet, that it would authorize some sort of administrative approval with Spicer and the zoning administrators. Essentially, they would have to meet all the zoning ordinance requirements and all the conditions of the project, and they could make minor changes if it's compliant with the zoning ordinance. If that was a feature that was part of your past project. If the zoning administrator or Spicer thinks that it is inappropriate for that to occur, which is a method that is outlined in your zoning ordinance, they can say that particular change needs to come to you to consider. But that's the reason we wanted to be consistent with prior approval. And this is a very large project. It's different than even most special land use permits where you have one parcel, fairly certain, you know, you have multiple improvements, you have many turbines, you know, you get in the field and there's something that requires a turbine to be moved, you know, 5 feet, 10 feet. You don't necessarily want, well, unless you do want to have another site plan review meeting. So that is that process. And condition H is similar. So if you recall, there is a requirement for this project to have something called an aircraft detection lighting system to turn the lights off. You know, my understanding, to turn the lights off when aircraft is, you know, not in the area. That is that allows that. I believe there is either 1 or 2 towers to be sited as long with that administrative approval, as long as it meets all of the zoning ordinance requirements. And again, if the zoning administrator Spicer believes that the site plan needs to go to you, or the specifics need to go to you, they can do that. So that is that process. And then lastly, I did want to point out for the planning commission, condition I, which the applicant has offered the township. So there is already a condition, a special land use permit, that there must be an agreement with the road commission to repair the roads that are impacted by the project. However, I think some townships find that they also want to have some control over discretionary road repair that they have control over. So the applicant has offered $5,000 a turbine for road repairs that the townships could essentially discretionarily pay or fund. So that is I know, I understand, a very long resolution in a nutshell, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
In the resolution, I'm sorry if I missed it, but it seems like every resolution prior to had a caveat of a down payment or some funding that was available. Did I miss it? Did I-
Yeah, are you
For-
talking,
For
are
the
you,
decommissioning?
are you
What
talking,
number-
when
what
you're,
number would that be?
are you talking about essentially when the project needs to be removed at the end of its
The
lifespan?
decommissioning?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is in here.
That's in your,
Um,
it's in the special land use
So
permit.
just tell me where it is, because I read through it, but I missed it somehow.
I will,
So
that's okay. I know
it
there's
is
a lot, so I don't
on-
blame you.
So it's no less than
I just want to make
250.
sure that it's here.
Yes.
As we are
Page 7,
looking
yeah.
for it, so.
Page 7 and F
I'm
at the
sorry, what
top.
page?
Page 7 and F at the top, and what that requires is the applicant would need to enter into an agreement with the county board essentially, that would name the amount that needs to be
More than
more or less the
250.
bond amount. And
Yes.
that needs to be at least $250,000 a turbine, which is significantly more than your prior project.
Yes, okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was there, but somehow I missed it.
No, that's okay. That's very important.
I just want to make sure.
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
I know.
Are we in the discussion stages of the resolution?
Does anybody have any other questions for Kyle or our experts or Spicer? Before we-
I have some stuff I'd like to go over. If you don't mind, I'll stand up and I'll face everybody. Oh, I think, I'd like to thank you folks. You've done a wonderful job presenting everything, explaining it to these people about how everything works, and I think you did a great job. I read the resolution, and my take on the resolution is this. On page 2, it says, provide guidance. That's Spicer's job, to provide guidance to the county. That's what it said, correct? Second paragraph, provide guidance to the planning commission. Okay? That being said, on page 5, the conditions have been reproduced below and shall remain binding on the project. However, the planning commission has conditions that have already been met by the applicant. Folks, just because we approve the site plan, planning commission, just because we approve the site plan doesn't mean we have to pass this resolution, because they haven't made compliance. I'll be getting to that.
I'm sorry, Mark, on page 5, what were you reading?
I was reading section 2 on page 5.
Yeah, and I think, and if I could add clarity, so there are certain conditions for the special land use permit that were met, such
Right.
as submitting a site plan for a substation. So those are not reproduced.
All right, on page 6, says the county planning commission may review complaints from adjacent properties and pose. And we don't have any, we haven't had a complaint from anybody. We haven't heard of any. The planning commission has been kept in the dark. The complaints are over in the office over there across the street. Here's a 12-page document you gotta fill out to get to look at it. Now, the animal control guy can see these complaints that the people have filed about the wind turbines and the shadow flicker. The friend of the court, the juvenile management, parks and recreation, community corrections permit, but no planning commission is on this list. To see the complaints that we're getting from the wind farm, from the people in the projects. I think that's kind of low. Going on to, we've never seen it, and we've never seen any annual reports. On page 6. Page 6 at the bottom, each year following, we get a report. Never had a report,
Have you asked for a report? Have there,
never had it.
Wait, hold on a second. Carly, you said, have we asked for
Right.
a report? Did
We
we?
haven't, I don't know,
Ever asked
it's always
for a
supposed to be
report?
getting it to us, I don't know.
The-
We never
and,
asked.
just to.
We should be asking for that, right?
Just a point of clarification, so these conditions apply to this particular project. So the approvals for past projects have looked different. And so I just want to make that clarification, but I can't, I'll let you finish that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a year from now.
So that's a good point, though. So from here on out, we are asking for an annual report.
Exactly, it would be,
Which would comply with this ordinance, which is so resolution. which is in the resolution.
Right.
So, okay, so
In the middle of page 5H, the project must comply with all applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations. Clear? One second.
wait a second, I don't have a 5
I don't either.
I think it's page 7.
7H.
No, that was in the middle of 7H.
Yes.
Oh, 7.
Project must comply with all local, state, laws. Okay, so page 8. I have never seen, I've never even heard, I've been in this for 12 years, I've never even heard of a curtailment plan. This is something new to this project, I'm guessing. But I sure would like to see one, you know how it works. Now, it says noise complaints on page 8, under M, noise complaints. You said section 14E, the zoning ordinance section 1638, was, you didn't put in there 16-5, which gives the planning commission the right to reject. I have it in I have the ordinances right here in my books.
So are you asking to have that added to M?
No, it's in there. It'll
No,
be,
you
in there.
said, oh, okay.
It's already in our ordinance. It's already in our ordinance,
All right.
whether or not they go from. Okay, number 55 decimals. Section 14E, 14.4E6. And the other one about the may revoke special permit. They don't meet the standards. On page 9, Q, maintain complaint resolution process to the publicity available, permanent phone number and contact. That's going to be in this project then, right? What you're saying?
Yes, it would be required.
Such complaints we handle within 5 business days and shall be resolved within 30 days. That's what you're saying, you're going to do.
Yes. That's what, if you were to adopt the resolution, well, let me see if this is part of the special use permit. So this is part of your special land use permit. So this would be required for the project.
Well, we've never been, we've got 3 projects in it, 4, I don't know how many, and 4 in the county. And we've never have had any reviews or anything like that.
So I think some of the context of your questions is we have added conditions based on continuing experience with these types of projects. So I think further protect the county. There's more and more education available and experience available to help safeguard the county and its residents from essentially issues with these types of land uses.
Okay. Under bottom of page 10, 3, site plan conditions. Approval subject to the following reasonable conditions upon requirement. The standard of the zoning ordinance or other applicable codes shall be followed, right?
Yep.
Okay. 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 Drainage, you kind of covered the drainage. We talked about that earlier today, so I won't go into that. However, look at E. Standard measuring.
13.
E, I'm sorry, I scribbled on it, I can't read this. DE. E, sound standard metric LEQ for requirements and conditions to meet related sound. The planning commission accepts. No, we never accepted it.
Well, so this is, if you were to approve this resolution, you would accept the materials which uses that metric by the applicant. So that doesn't mean you accept it now. That's for all of you to consider right now.
All right. Okay, so the energy equivalent averaging noise level, sound pressure metric proposed. Spicer picked this up and put metric system in here. Our ordinance is clear. It says 55 decibels, period, except for extreme condition, weather conditions. That's what it said. That's why I'm repeating it up here. You have it on board. So I've been repeating it, and you say, you're gonna meet all the codes. You're not meeting that code. It says the commission historically accepts. That's baloney. I totally object. I've been on this thing for a long time. Cannot let you do what you're doing. But here's the thing, when you average the sound from 0 to 90 decibels, it's 45. Hello? That's like driving your car down the road and the policeman pulls you over for going 60 and a 30. And you tell the policeman, I said, wait a minute, I just stopped for a stop sign down here. And you stopped me here, my average speed was 30. Come on. That's what this is saying right here. Average speed, average sound of the thing. And this is the problem. I'm getting a lot of complaints from a lot of people that haven't been heard. And I'm speaking for them. And they're not here for different reasons. They're not here tonight. But it's to average the sound. That's why you guys are getting away with shoving 70 and 80 decibels in these neighbors' houses. These people are in terrible shape.
So Mark, if you had your choice, how would you rewrite that section?
I would say take it out of the county book.
Just say,
Say
and
55,
maximum of 55.
55 and habitable residents. Just like what they've been putting up on the board.
Would
That's
you
the
like?
ordinance. That is what the, Spicer doesn't have a job to write ordinances. They don't write ordinances. That's what they're doing here. They're writing an ordinance.
No, these are conditions.
These are
If
conditions.
we were
Now,
to accept,
It ends up being gospel because if you continue with this, it's going to be binding on this contract and it'll be forever.
so Mark, our job as a planning commission is to accept a special use permit and site plan based off our ordinance. We hire the professionals to make sure that it checks every box and that we are within those guidelines in our current ordinance. We have Spicer and our legal here telling us that these site plans meet our ordinance.
Averaging doesn't work.
Well, that's not, I mean, that's our ordinance. I mean,
Well, if you approve this resolution, that's what you're saying. Averaging works. 0 to 90 is 45.
and that's why we have language in here to protect landowners, to protect residents, where if, you know, those sounds and shadow flickers and everything is exceeding our ordinance, we have written in protection in this ordinance if we choose to adopt it to protect us, and not only the landowners, but also the county.
Well, if you vote for this, you own it. I can't change it later. Spicer told us out by changing the ordinance by its resolution. Spicer has rewritten the Gratiot County ordinances by this resolution. Call it what it is. Change it to 14-4E3, number 6. You have failed to meet the ordinance. Spicer broke our trust because they were going to give us guidance. They were supposed to give us planning commission guidance on all this stuff. Well, they broke our trust. They did this on a past project. They did it on the Polaris project. We need energy. We need energy. We can't live without it. But we have to be able to live in our houses in the country. I make a motion that we don't approve the resolution.
All right, does anybody support that motion? Okay,
Make a motion that we table it.
does anybody support that?
You people didn't hear what I said.
I don't think we've heard from any of the people yet that are here. So,
We had a public comment period and nobody wanted to speak. So we're following the agenda at this point.
I'm gonna make a motion that we accept the resolution as written.
Do we have a support for that?
Support.
All right. Motion by Janelle, supported by David, that we support resolution number 2022. It's not filled out. Resolution approving the Heartland Wind Farms project site plans for Newark and North Star Townships. All in favor?
Roll call.
I'm sorry, roll call. We'll start with Janelle.
Yes.
Al Quinn.
Yes.
Carla, yes. Danny?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
And Caroline?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-1. All righty. Well, thank you. Any old business that we need to discuss? Thank you, Janelle. Yes. Deandra would just like to kind of go over our current complaint process since it's kind of been brought up a couple of times.
Hi, guys. Deandra Messer here. I'm the Deputy Police Officer for the county at the Community Development. I'm also the recording secretary for the Planning Commission. So it hasn't brought into question the past 3 meetings that I know of about the complaint process. And now that I'm back to my role, I took a short maternity leave. I decided it'd be a good time to go over that. Just because we are going over this new project and our older projects where it seems to be there's a lot of complaints. So in regards to complaints for the county, they will be submitted, and it can be complaints for anything, but the planning commission will hear complaints in regards to zoning, because that's what they handle. So basically we have a form, it's available in our office, it's available online. If someone so requests, we can also mail them a copy of this form. They will fill out the form, and then our zoning administrator, Bill, he will review this form, make sure that the parcel itself is located within the townships that we zone, just to make sure that we do have jurisdiction. And then he will determine in which violation this complaint refers to. Typically, this will take about a week to 2 process because he will have to go on site. He'll have to do an investigation, that sort of thing. And then after an investigation occurs, and a solution, whether whatever the violation is, it's kind of hard to determine. Since we're talking about wind turbines, I'll just use that as an example. If, say, there is a complaint about the noise being too loud, our process is we do contact those wind energy partners, whether it's DTE, whoever worked on the Polaris project, that kind of thing. We will contact them, let them know the complaint has been made, and they will take it from there. We will contact the original person who made the complaint, let them know exactly what's happening, and then we will make sure that they get in contact with those companies as well. Say that we have a complaint that's not within our jurisdiction, say a township that we don't zone, we can't do anything with that, unfortunately. But what we do is we will forward that complaint to that township, and we will say, hey, we have a complaint here. This is our typical process, and we wanted to make you aware of it. But we can't go any further than that. So once a complaint has been resolved to the satisfaction of both the complainant and then the party who maybe caused the violation, we will close the complaint at that point, and then all complaints are filed in our office. They're digital copies, but they can be easily printed off. In order to access these, you have to submit a FOIA request just because they do contain personal information, the complainants. And then once we FOIA administrator, which is our county administrator, Tracy, she will review these requests. She will forward them to our department. We'll compile all of the data, any complaints that are referenced on that FOIA request, and then we'll send those to whoever requested this information. And this is how most complaint processes work. We haven't had any wind turbine complaints that fall within our jurisdiction. We have had complaints in general about wind turbines in previous projects, but none that fell in our jurisdiction. So what we did was we forwarded them to the correct townships. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can always call our office. Otherwise, that process has been the same, and unless it needs to change in some way, that's how it'll be through this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. All right, I just want to thank everybody. I know we've all put a lot of hard work into this. Thank you, every Spicer and Kyle and everybody. This was a process. So does anybody have any other comments or anything before we entertain a motion to adjourn?
Chair, on your agenda, there's a second period of public comment near the end. Yeah, I think you could either hold the public comment period or you could move to amend the agenda because you've already had.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Do we have any public comment?
And I'll check on Zoom real quick. Does anyone have public comment on Zoom? If you do, could you please raise your hand or unmute yourself? I'm not seeing anyone on Zoom.
All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Motion by Al Quinn, supported by Caroline, that we adjourn today's meeting at, let's do 7:25 p.m. All in favor? Opposed, the same. Motion carried.